to the Living Legacy of Colegio César Chávez documentary screening and panel discussion. I'm Katie Pearson. I'm the Education Manager for the Oregon Historical Society. I see many familiar faces in the crowd tonight, but for those of you who are new to us, welcome. The mission of the Oregon Historical Society is to preserve our state's history and make it accessible in ways that advance knowledge and inspire curiosity about the people, places, and events that have shaped Oregon. We hope you had time to visit the exhibition this evening. We want to encourage you to visit ohs.org if you would like to learn more about the exhibition, if you would like to learn about our free standards-aligned K-12 curriculum, or to read our scholarly articles from the Oregon Historical Quarterly. Tonight's event includes a screening of OPB's new Oregon Experience documentary, The Living Legacy of Colegio César Chávez, and a panel discussion. Colegio César Chávez was the first independent, four-year accredited Chicano college in the United States. It was located in Mount Angel and ran for 10 years, and during that time, it focused on student. This idea of student and being student-centered is something that educators across the country understand as important. And so we are excited that 50 years later, we are working on really making sure that our schools are focusing on celebrating the identities and the communities of all of our students. Now, there are many groups and individuals in the room tonight that have made this event possible. So first off, I would like to start by saying a thank you to our partner with Oregon Public Broadcasting. Let's give them a round of applause. Another incredibly important community partner is POTR. If you're a member of POTR, please raise your hand and let's give them a round of applause. Now, you're all a wonderful, gracious crowd, and you already did this, but we would like to give a round of applause for the wonderful Forest Grove Mariachi Band. And this is an evening to celebrate the work of Colegio. Please raise your hand if you had a connection to Colegio, either as a teacher, a student, or a community member. Raise them proud, yeah! Let's give them a round of applause too. All right. So it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Natalia Fernández. Natalia is the Associate Professor and Curator of the Oregon Multicultural Archives and OSU Queer Archives within the Oregon State University Special Collections and Archives Research Center. Natalia is also the curator of the exhibition you viewed this evening, Colegio César Chávez, The Legacy Lives On. Let's give a warm welcome.
Good evening, bienvenidos. I am so delighted to be here. Thank you so much to the Oregon Historical Society for hosting the exhibit Colegio César Chávez, The Legacy Lives On, El legado, sigue, vivo. And thank you so much for hosting us tonight, this evening, for the film screening and the panel discussion. And I'm just so delighted to see this amazing crowd. Thank you so much for being here. So I first learned of Colegio César Chávez over a decade ago through my work with archival materials, primary sources, textual documents, photographs that exist within our repository. And those are some of the materials that you'll see in the exhibition. And around that time, it was also my pleasure to meet Sonny Montes, one of our featured speakers tonight, while he was promoting his book, Sonny Montes and Mexican-American Activism in Oregon by Glenn Anthony May. If you're interested in a deeper dive in this history, in addition to the documentary, the exhibit, I strongly encourage you to take a look at this book. It has amazing stories from Sonny and a history of Mexican-American activism in Oregon. So, as part of my work as an archivist, it's always such a pleasure to share the story of Colegio César Chávez with students, with researchers, and with the general public. The story of Colegio is a significant part of the history of education reform activism here in Oregon and for the nation, led by Oregon's Chicano community and its allies. All who supported and participated in the Colegio César Chávez created an incredible foundation of social justice advocacy for us to learn from, and an inspiring legacy for us to continue. And I hope that that's what you'll take away from tonight, is the legacy that we are inheriting, and that it is our responsibility to continue, and our privilege and honor to continue. Just a little bit of history of how this all came to be. A few years ago, when I learned that Poder, Oregon's Latino Leadership Network, was planning a 50th anniversary commemorative event in 2023 to celebrate the establishment and commemorate that history of Colegio César Chávez, I was excited to support that effort by curating an exhibit, and that's the one that you see here at OHS today. That community event, which I think some of you attended, I see some familiar faces, was a really joyful occasion for people associated with the Colegio to share their stories, and for the general public to have an opportunity to learn of the Colegio's history and impact. And it was through that event that we connected with OPB and with Alicia Avila, who shared her idea with us to create a documentary about the Colegio's legacy. And then she and her amazing colleagues filmed and produced that documentary last year, and we're really excited for this to be the official in-person screening of the documentary. So now I am delighted to introduce Alicia, and then she will introduce the film. So Alicia Avila is a multilingual journalist and documentary producer based here in Portland, Oregon. A common theme of her work is advocating for underrepresented communities, language justice, and accessibility. She is a champion of collaborative and community-led storytelling, and she leads her video production work through a trauma-informed practices and a bilingual, bicultural reporting lens. Her most recent work led to Pacific Northwest-based nonprofit Oregon Food Bank to transition into a fully bilingual English-Spanish content. Alicia is a proud first-generation Chicana, born and raised in Southeast Los Angeles. So everyone, please welcome Alicia.
Hi everyone, good evening, buenas tardes. Thank you to Katie and Natalia for the introductions. Agradezco a Natalia y a Katie por las introducciones. Y también les agradezco a cada uno de ustedes por acompañarnos esta noche. Este proyecto es sobre nuestra comunidad, nos representa a todos, a cada uno de nosotros que estamos aquí esta noche, y les agradezco su atendencia. I want to express my gratitude to all of the community that has joined us this evening. This project is about us, it's for us, and I'm just really excited that you're all here to share in this special occasion. My hope is that you'll walk away from this event feeling inspired and invigorated by the perseverance of the local Chicano community here in the region. This little-known story deserves to be told and retold as we work to create a more just and equitable world. Mi esperanza esta noche es que se vayan de este evento llenos de inspiración y llenos de reconocimiento por la perseverancia de nuestra comunidad chicana latina en la región, y que esta historia los inspire a continuar el trabajo que estamos haciendo para crear un mundo más justo y equitativo para todos. Estamos a punto de escuchar los recuentos personales de las personas involucradas en la fundación del Colegio César Chávez, al igual que los recuentos de las personas que llegaron a ser impactadas por esa misma institución. Y sin estas voces, sin la presencia de estas personas, nuestro proyecto no existiría. Y le quiero agradecer a Sonny, a José, a Teresa y a la familia Veliz. Ellos están aquí presentes esta noche por compartir sus historias con nosotros y darnos la confianza de poder hacer este documental. We're about to watch the first-hand accounts of the foundation of Colegio César Chávez, as well as the first-hand accounts of the impact that the institution came to have on the community. Without the participation and stories and voices of this community, the project would not exist. I want to thank Sonny, José, Teresa, and the Veliz family. They're here with us tonight, all of them, for sharing their experiences with us and trusting us to share their story with you. And lastly, I just want to let you know that the art of video production takes an entire team. This isn't just my work. I want to thank OPB and the entire crew that worked with us, camera operators, audio engineers, editors, graphic designers. Some of them are here with us tonight, and their work is really invaluable in all of this storytelling. El arte de la producción es un esfuerzo de equipo, y quiero agradecer a OPB y a todo el equipo que trabajó en este proyecto. No fui solamente yo, tenemos un equipo de videógrafos, editores, diseñadoras gráficas, y todos ellos nos acompañan esta noche, y les quiero agradecer todo el trabajo que hacen para poder llegar a este punto donde podemos compartir estas historias con ustedes. Gracias infinitas a todos. Vamos a empezar el documental. Prepárense para aprender sobre la historia y el legado del Colegio César Chávez, el estado de la educación para la comunidad latina en esta región y un poco de la historia chicana de la región del noroeste. My eternal gratitude to all of you here tonight and everyone that helped with this project. We're going to get started and get ready to learn about the legacy of Colegio César Chávez, the state of education for the Latino community in the region, and some of the history of our Chicano community. Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. We're going to have a panel discussion. So we're just going to take a moment to gather ourselves here. We've got Sonny and José, the co-founders of Colegio. And we also have Anthony, founder of Poder, son of graduates of Colegio. And yeah, we're just going to have a panel discussion here. We've got some topics ready to discuss, and then we're going to invite you to ask us any questions about education, bilingual, bicultural curriculums, and video production. So our three topics are history, legacy, and future. So I'm going to invite Sonny and José here to expand on some of the folks who also contributed to the foundation of Colegio César Chávez, who might not have been featured in this project.
Are we on?
I hope so.
Testing. Okay. Gosh, first of all, I want to thank everyone for attending this evening. We expected a few people, but not this many. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for being a part of this wonderful celebration. Thanks to OPB, Alicia, the Oregon Historical Society, of course, Poder, who brought the dream back to life. And thanks to my family, especially the wind beneath my wings, Kathy. We're going on 62 years here pretty soon. And, my son who flew in from Phoenix and my daughter who's nearby, her name is Rochelle, but we call her Shelly, AKA Shelly. But anyway, they've been a part of me for all of this, and thank them. If it weren't for women like the ones that are in my family, I wouldn't have come this far. But I really appreciate everybody coming here, and I was really inspired, and a lot of memories, and a lot of things. I also noticed I had hair then, my gosh, long hair, and my mustache was twice as long, but not the. Anyway, te amo, mi amor, te amo chingos. Thank you very much for all these years. I'll pass it on. Yeah.
Oh, opening remarks. Okay. I thought I was going to have to answer a question already. Opening remarks, really, really, really happy with the turnout. Really, really, really happy with the young minds, young students that are sitting right over there in the back. I'm so happy that you're here, and I'm going to be directing some comments in that direction for the future of the state of Oregon later on during the presentation. But I also want to thank, I think that there's some, there's some people here that need to be recognized. Eliza Canty Jones from the Oregon Historical Society. She was fantastic in accommodating all of our needs here. Very, 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 very good person. Robin Kay, Jennifer McCormick, Rachel Crittenden, I believe. And of course, I want to recognize Alicia Avila for a great job that she did with the documentary. Fantastic. And I also want to recognize OPB, of course, for allowing her to do this documentary. And then the other thing too is I want to recognize Natalia Fernández for a great job. She has been working with us for a number of years now. The exhibit and so on is fantastic. I think you guys would agree. The other thing too is that I want to also recognize somebody that's sitting next to me right here, one of our young future leaders that's today one of the leaders in the state of Oregon. It was Anthony's approach when he approached us 2 years ago to see if he would be allowed to do our 50th anniversary celebration at the Mount Angel College. And of course, we agreed. And I'm going to be going into some detail, but later on during the program. But I will be eternally grateful to Anthony for taking the lead. And there are some things in place right now that are going to surprise you that hopefully will produce something that all of us are looking forward to in the very near future. So with that, I'll stop at that.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks everybody for being here. Oregon Historical Society, thank you. Of course, Oregon Public Broadcasting, and a special thanks. Alicia and I have hung out a lot, probably more than she ever wanted to. But thank you everybody for being here, especially those. I was in the back standing, so thank you everybody. Shout out to those in the back, and appreciate that. I want to thank again Natalia. She was amazing. These are people that you just meet along the journey. And of course, I want to recognize and have her stand up, Teresa Alonso Leon, who was part and instrumental in this story, this telling. So our former state representative, thank you. But I just want to tell you just how actually this started. So I was a young person. My dad was attending Colegio and all of this. So it had been like decades since I've gone back to the Colegio. And I went one just summer. I just got in my car from Woodburn, drove to Mount Angel, and I pulled on the doors of the college, and it was locked. And right when I had given up, I turned around and I was walked a couple steps away, and somebody opened the door and said, hey, I told her the story that this used to be the Colegio. Oh, really? And I just came to see the murals. And she said, what murals? And I was like, what do you mean, what murals? I go, the murals that were on the walls. And so I walked in, I turned to my right, and all of the murals especially the main one, was painted over. So I just hit me really hard, I go, they're erasing the two gentlemen, their families, my family, Latino, our community, all those people. And I don't know if those that don't read even Spanish, but in one of the scenes, the final scenes, there is literally there's nothing on the site that says that the Colegio even existed. So I took that to heart, and I'm kind of a doer, those that know me. I said, you know what, nobody's going to erase me and who we are, right, Oregon's history. So I took it upon myself to do what we were talking about tonight. So that was kind of the catalyst. It was just one of those fateful moments. I could have walked away. If that woman wouldn't have opened that door, we probably all wouldn't be sitting here tonight. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
I think Sonny and Jose have prepared a list here of acknowledgements and recognitions of other folks who are not featured in the documentary who also contributed to the founding of Colegio. So I'm going to go ahead and give them an opportunity to share those names and some of that history with you tonight.
Okay, you want me to start? Can you hear me now? Okay. One of the things that I've said all along for many years is the Colegio did not happen because of José Romero and Sonny Montes. The Colegio, this event occurred because there was a lot of people involved in developing Colegio César Chávez. Our community, we got 150% support from our community, from the Chicano community. It was a very difficult experience. Trust me, it was a very difficult experience. Just a few pointers before I mention some other organizations. One year, I believe, we went 8, 9 months without a paycheck. The only money we were bringing in was speaking engagements. Anytime, one time I was invited to the University of Oregon, I spoke, they gave me $500, and then the plan was that whoever went out and got money, we would come back and divide it equally between the staff. We did that for about 9 months. One of the things that really helped us, and the whole area of community organizing. And again, I'm directing myself to the young minds that are sitting back there, our high school students. If we hadn't learned from some of our mentors how to be involved in community organizing, a lot of things would not have occurred. Our exposure, my exposure to Crusade for Justice, Jorge Gonzalez in Denver, Colorado, was extremely helpful. My participation in visiting New Mexico, the land grants, Reyes Lopez Tijerina, was very, very helpful. My participation in the Chicano Moratorium March in LA against the war in Vietnam was extremely helpful, even though there were some sad things that occurred there afterwards. The training that we got, approximately 200 Latina students in Los Gatos, California, was instrumental. They brought in people from the union, from all over the state of California to work with us and share information about how things were being done. All those things contributed. My participation with the Valley Migrant League also helped me a lot because we basically turned that organization over and allowed the farm workers to have over 50% decision-making power with an OEO poverty program. That took a lot of work, but people that deserve the credit especially with the Valley Migrant League is John Little, who was the executive director at that time. He and a lot of Latinas were involved in turning that organization over and allowing farm workers to finally have a voice in the decision-making process. The other thing that I want to mention is when you start getting involved, we had 3 areas of concern. One was HEW, one was Housing and Urban Development, and the other one was the Northwest Accreditation Association. 3 solid areas of concern that we had to confront. It never crossed my mind or crossed our mind that we would fail against HEW, that we would fail against HUD, that we would fail against the Northwest Accreditation Association. I felt very confident to the point that people kind of thought that we were a little crazy. You know, when I remember the first time I offered HUD $1 for the property, and they thought I was kidding. And I said, no, I'm not kidding. We're offering you $1 and you can declare it surplus property, just like you've done with other colleges and universities and organizations throughout the United States. I was not kidding. And they've done it over and over and over again, but because we were a Chicano Latino colegio, they wanted us to come up with $1.5 million that we owed HUD. You know, HEW, we twice we went and appealed decisions And they laughed at us. They said, the only way we're going to release the monies for student financial aid for our students is if you receive accreditation from the Regional Accreditation Association. They gave us a tough time, but guess what? We received candidacy status from the Northwest Accreditation Association. We had a settlement with HUD. We bought the place for $250,000. And we went back to HEW and told them that what they had done was totally, totally unfair. But they were forced to release the monies to our students once we received candidacy status from the Northwest Accreditation Association. So it didn't come easy. It didn't come easy because part of community organizing is that you have to take it. You have to take them on. And if it hadn't been for the National Council de la Raza, if it hadn't been for the Centro de la Raza in Seattle, Washington, if it hadn't been for Centro Cultural of Washington County, if it hadn't been for a lot of community-based organizations in the state of Oregon that supported marches, we marched a number of times. They supported sit-ins. We actually had sit-ins at Portland office of HUD, and we had sit-ins by the Centro de la Raza in Seattle, Washington, with HUD. And we had to do that to put pressure on them to understand that we were serious about getting the properties. So all of those things happened. But if it hadn't been for the Northwest Chicano Council, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, that supported us 1,000% throughout the Colegio experience, it wouldn't have happened. So all of these things, especially to our young people that are here, you know, the idea is always, always, you know, give it your best. Give it your best, 100%. Don't give up. Do not give up. They say that happy are those who dream dreams and are ready to pay the price to make them come true. That was from a poster that was in my office for many years at the Colegio. You know, I believe that. I believe that. And I think that everything is possible. And even though the Colegio is not here today, if people ask me all the time, Sonny, would you do the same thing all over again if you had a chance? There's not a single thing that I would do differently, but go back and do what I've done, what I've tried to do. But it was not Sonny and Jose. It was a passion of a group of staff members, Jen Chavez, Lainey Cabell, that's sitting right over here, Maria Lanís, Jose Romero. I'm talking about the first tier of staff members that had this, we would get together. We didn't have time to fight with each other. We didn't have time to fight with each other. We were so busy involved in changing and trying to generate funding for the Colegio that everything went smoothly for many, many, many years until we left. You know, so please, you know, don't give up on that. Okay?
Part of tonight's event refers to the legacy. The legacy lives on. El legado continúa, sigue viviendo. Y el legado de César Chávez is no exception. The legacy, though it happened 50 years ago, continues to this day. Every day you hear that they named a school, a park. Here in Oregon, we struggled for almost 2.5 years to rename a street in southeast, northeast Portland. But the legacy is ongoing, and it's worth fighting for because the role model, the example, you know, going from struggle, from obstacle to success is something that can be done and has been done and continues to get done. As I said, currently there are hundreds of parks and recreation centers and schools and streets, but there's only one, and there has only been, and there will only continue to be one Colegio César Chávez. And even though, you know, we had our heyday from 1973 to 1983, the seeds were planted. They were in the ground, they were lying fallow for all these years. It took people like Anthony and Veliz to come and nurture, irrigate a little bit, pull the weeds, turn the ground over, and here we come again. We're on the rise. Sonny and I may not be around to see the end of this, but we're happy that it's there and it's coming, and that the legend, the legacy, the work that was started 50 years ago will continue, especially in the field of higher education. You know, we talk about programs for our K-12 kids, but as Teresa was talking earlier, college, university education is a new frontier for our community, and hopefully Colegio and Colegio 2.0, which may come about in the near future, will address that, and we'll have more of our kids. I heard in the video that in 1973 we had like 300 or 400 kids in higher education, community colleges and universities. We weren't being recruited. They weren't being invited. They weren't, you know, getting the curriculum to become college students. Now, according to what I last read, we've got about 32,000 of our community, the largest ethnic and linguistic minority in the state of Oregon, are now on some of our state campuses. But that number still, you know, is in need of mentoring, of coursework, of all kinds of things that will make them a success and have them come out the other end with their degree. So the Colegio may have started this. It may have set the foundation for what later became, you know, 2 elementary schools here in Eugene and North Portland. It became the basis for the founding of the César Chávez Student Leadership Conference, which Sonny will talk about shortly. And it also became the basis, the legend, the legacy for renaming of that street in Northeast Portland, Colegio César Chávez Boulevard. So it's the legend lives, and we continue to support it, and to the extent we can continue helping the next generation, we're going to be here until better things happen.
Thank you, everyone. I want to invite Anthony to share some of the future plans and to maybe also share about the importance of bilingual and bicultural education. Why is that something that is important and relevant to our communities today?
Yeah, well, thank you. You know, so the future plans is, so I'm a marketing guy, and so I coined it Colegio César Chávez 2.0, but really, that's really what that means is we want to restart the Colegio. It's really interesting. It's crazy because it was called the School Without Walls, right? College Without Walls. But now if you think about that, just 50 years ago in modern time, that's like virtual, right? So you never know, right? It's crazy how this stuff happens. But I got to tell you a little bit, just I got to give a shout out to my parents. That part that you saw, my parents, since that day, my mom had her leg amputated. So that's become even more special to me because she was actually, you know, standing at that point. So, you know, but more than anything, you know, my parents, you know, like my mom said, you know, they were involved in everything, and they took me everywhere, and I'm, you know, just a product of that. And, you know, I'm from Woodburn, and, you know, being involved in the Colegio, I got to tell you this quick story. My mentor was a gentleman by the name of Cipriano Ferel. He was the founder of PECUN, which is Oregon's only farm worker union. He mentored me his entire life until he passed away, and I didn't even know what mentoring was, to be honest. He would just pick me up and take me to all these strikes and I'd help him make huelga signs, which are strike signs, at the PECUN site when it was just this little house. And then my mom became one of the first employees at Salud Medical Clinic. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it was Oregon's first farm worker clinic. So, and on, right? So, you know, it's a blessing or a burden, but it's only crazy till you do it. And since I was around amazing people that had a vision, and you know what? They did it, right? This is proof right here. And then to this day, PECUN exists, right? It's still going. To this day, Salud Medical Center, to this day, Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation, and on and on and on. So I think, you know, whether it's a blessing or a burden, I think there's people say, well, how do you do this all? I go, you know what? It is a spiritual movement. I really believe that. If you looked at any of the movement, the Chicano Latino movement, there was a spiritual presence there, and there's symbolism there. And but with that, I think that's just who we are and what we are. And we always, when it comes down to it, even to this day, we work hard to achieve our goals, right? And you see that daily with people working out in the fields in the Willamette Valley, all over our country. But when it comes to one thing that I really admired about the Colegio is bilingual, is honoring our language, right? I was the first Latino ever elected to the school board in Woodburn, and at that time, we had the vote to start bilingual education, and everybody along those votes said, we need to learn English, we need to learn English, we need to learn English, and we need to learn English. When it came to me, I said, but you know what? We speak great Spanish, right? I flipped that funnel, right? Because for so long in bilingual, our language has been looked less on, and it's actually been an asset. So I'm just using that as an example of that moment in time in Woodburn, and by the way, we have one of the best dual language programs in the United States, by the way. But what I'm saying with that is that language is part of who we are, and it's important. And it shouldn't only be stop at K-12, but it has its place and longevity in higher education. So that's what I would say about that. And I hope that the future is I need all of your help, because Colegio César Chávez 2.8 will happen. It's going to happen with just us, or it can happen with all of us. But I can guarantee you the way, what they've instilled in me, my parents, have that fire in me, that si se puede attitude, and I hope that all of you will join us in this amazing journey.
I'm going to try. It's on? Can you hear me now? I'm going to try and share with you a quick story, but you know what? I'm going to stand up. I think you can hear. My voice varies, so I think you can hear. Sorry. I believe it was 1976, 77. I was at the Colegio, and I got a call from the union office in California. And it was a representative of Cesar Chavez, an attorney. He called me and said that Cesar had already visited us twice, I believe, by then. And he was going to get an award from, guess who? HEW. He was going to get an award from HEW. And he wanted to know if there was anything he could do to help us with the settlement with HUD. And I said, I think you can. So what happened, and I'm gonna try and speed it up a little bit because I don't want to bore you to death here. He said, we need, Sonny, we need you to call your contacts in Washington, D.C., the National Council de la Raza, and we need about 20 Latinos, Latinas working in that area to attend the negotiation with HUD, because we set up a 9 a.m. negotiation with HUD, with Cesar, our attorney, Don Wilner, myself, and his attorney, and of course, Cesar Chavez. And then let me show you, so you can picture this. We were at the HUD office, a huge conference room. All of the HUD representatives were on that side, and all of us over here were on this side, okay? And we're negotiating back and forth. They closed the doors and everything. Right before we went to that meeting, Cesar asked me to come, myself and the attorney, to come by and meet with him prior to the session at 9 o'clock, which we did. And then he instructed the attorney, his assistant, to make 3 calls. This is the honest to God true story. He said, I want you to call some congressman, I think it was Hawkins in California. I want you to call the national office of the AFL-CIO, and I believe somebody, the third one was somebody in the White House. And he says, I want you to call them and tell them that I want them to call the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and tell her that you need a settlement with Colegio César Chávez. So we get together. Raúl Izaguirre was fantastic in gathering a whole bunch of people together. And then, so we're sitting there, we're negotiating back and forth, and then I was asked a question. They asked me a question. Remember, I was very young, maybe 20, 30 years, 26, 30 years, 31 years, I'm not sure. Anyway, they asked me a question, and I didn't know the answer to it. And I basically tried to BS my way through it. I really did. Try to BS my way through it. And you know what? It didn't work. Because Cesar was sitting next to me, and then Cesar right away called timeout. He went like this, we need a timeout. Can you guys leave us here, and why don't you guys go someplace else while we have a discussion here? And then I said, oh my God, what did Sonny Montes do? So then Cesar, after everybody left, says, Sonny, did you know the answer to that question? I said, no, I didn't. He says, look, Sonny, there's no shame in not knowing a response to any question. You know, all of us. Do you think I know the answers to all the questions that people ask me? He says, I've learned in negotiating with growers that if you don't know the question or the answer to the question, all you have to do is call for a timeout and then just talk between yourselves, and come up with the answer. I have never forgotten that session and that conversation that Cesar had with me. Never. And I've used it because I learned a huge lesson. There's no reason to BS your way through when you can do a whole bunch of other things to make sure that you're having the impact that you want to. And we were negotiating to buy the colegio, you know. And they came back. I answered the question, you know, after we consulted with each other. And I felt bad about it, but I learned tons what not to do in the future, and it helped me tremendously. So to our young people that are sitting here, don't feel bad. If you don't know the answer to a particular question, get together with other people, discuss it, but don't try and BS your way through certain situations. I learned that the hard way. By the way, I think that by Cesar Chavez being present there, I think they thought that he was going to start picketing HUD or something, because shortly thereafter, we bought the place for $250,000.
You've all heard that expression, you won a battle, a battle here and there, but in the end, you lost the war. Or vice versa, you won some battles and you still lost the war. And I heard this over and over again, that yes, we successfully regained our accreditation from the Northwest Association of Schools and Colleges. Yes, that allowed us to receive money from HEW, Health, Education, and Welfare, for our students and for staff development. Yes, we settled with HUD. Yes, we graduated 50 students over a 10-year period of 165 that were enrolled. Yes, we did a lot of other things that I mentioned here. We kept the dream alive. We kept, going day in and day out and sticking together, bringing fire. But in the end, we faltered. And as the video said, if we didn't have the resources, the money, the foundation base, we were bound to falter. But that's what they say. Okay, you won a battle here, you won a battle there, but in this instance, you lost the war. Well, we didn't lose the war. We won both the battles and the war. The war is still going. And it's 150 years later. The Colegio, as I said a few minutes ago, was lying in fallow, and because of individuals and organizations that had our concern and our well-being and our history, they brought it back to life. And so the war is still on, but we didn't lose it, and we're still not going to lose it. We're going to continue as we move to reinstitute, as Antonio mentioned, Anthony mentioned, the bilingual programs. One of the ones that I heard in the tape that reminded me, it was called the College Without Walls, Colegio Sin Paredes. We were doing this 50-some years ago when virtual learning or these colleges that are selling services are doing it now. But we were doing this with our students, those who couldn't attend, who were working in Idaho, in Washington, in the Willamette Valley, those who had jobs but needed to work and go to school. We were able to accommodate them. And because of the College Without Walls, we were kind of a pioneer in this area. Now, almost every campus, every university has this program as part of their makeup. But we did some innovative things in those years. The graphic arts design, and we had one of the best in the world with Anthony, Danny Siga. Some of his work is in our posters. The mural that Anthony talked about, that was his doing. Too bad it's gone. It was beautiful. And it was worth, every morning when you walk through, that's the inspiration we got from that mural. But again, those that said, we won some battles but lost the war, we're winning, we won them both, and we're still in the fight, and we still have a lot to do. The playing field is still not where it should be. We still need those support services for our post-secondary education, college kids. We still need professors, advisors, mentors, support service of every kind. And I think universities are going to start looking at this. And we need that option. Students with the number that we have now have options. Some of them are going back to something like Colegio and retrieving their history, their culture, their language, something that they weren't able to get when they were in high school because it wasn't available. But it's happening now with Chicano Latino studies, multicultural education, and we're fastest growing minority in the state and the country, and we're going to have our way come sooner or later, and we're going to plan for it and do it right, and learn from our experiences that we had 50 years ago.
Thank you. I want to thank Sonny, Jose, and Anthony here for having this discussion. And now I want to open up the floor to questions that any of you might have about education, about film production, about this project. Y si tienen alguna pregunta en español, no les dé vergüenza, hagan la pregunta y aquí entre nosotros nos acomodamos para hacer una respuesta.
Muchísimas gracias. Felicidades. Congratulations. I'm Carlos Romo, and I've been an educator like a lot of you know. But my question is that we need to not only move forward with it, but we also need to educate our overall population. If I mention Chicanos to my grandkids, they don't know what it is. If I mention huelgas, or if I mention anything else, it is. It happened to be at the time that it was taking place somewhat militant. Okay, we need to understand that it deserves its right by coming to an educational basis. All this thing about the fact that, you know, we did a lot of other things, that's history. We need to push forward and be with the modern society to say that we are Chicanos, that we are Hispanics, that we are Latinos, but overall we are people that are interested in the better education for everybody. I don't think you can disagree with that, but I'm thinking, why haven't we had enough people realizing that they should back us up in some form or another? Any comments that you can make on that?
Say that again, Primo. Why haven't we had what?
Why haven't we been successful in getting sufficient backing, financial and otherwise, legislative and otherwise, to really move on with the Colegio?
Okay, there has been very minimal progress in that area. I know that when we were in our heyday, there were but 2 or 3 organizations that were advocates for our community. Now we look at what we have with the Oregon Latino Administrators Association, the Oregon Bilingual Association, the Oregon Conference. We have tons and tons of organizations now that I've been either a part of or continue to be a part of, that at some point I would like to see us all come together, because there's people out there looking at higher ed, some looking at bilingual education, some looking at training administrators, some looking at community involvement, parent community involvement. if we were to get all of these groups together and form like a lanyard, where you interweave, I've seen these ropes where you have different colors in them, and they're strong. They can pull a car out of a ditch. They're that strong. But if this happens in the future, which I hope it does, it's going to unite us with our different, because our purposes are almost the same. It's just a different approach to it, either education, administration, parent involvement. If all of this comes together, I know we're going to have a lot more power, a lot more strength, and a lot more success than we experienced 50 years ago. It's there. It just needs to be coordinated.
Just briefly, and we discussed this at a meeting at Chemeketa in Woodburn, and I'm just going to read this, okay? Because this is the direction that I'm hoping we're going to be able to take. First of all, we have decided to connect with Poder to become the lead agency for proposed projects for Colegio César Chávez in years to follow. We're looking at approval of a short-term planning grant or full proposal grant from Oregon foundations. I think that it's time. We've been underrepresented as far as monies that are awarded to the Latino community in the state of Oregon. Sometimes we're afraid to ask for large amounts of money. We're going to be asking for large amounts of money. You can rest assured of that. Creation of an independent Colegio César Chávez Higher Education Planning Committee on a long-term basis. Projected future programs to include in a full proposal grant from Oregon foundations, bilingual dual language teacher training, Chicano studies, cross-cultural education, student mentoring at designated school districts in Oregon, statewide expansion of the OSU Colegio César Chávez mobile exhibit to reach more students in schools in the Latino community, statewide expansion of the César Chávez Leadership Conference, and the formation of the César Chávez Institute, which we can describe in a few minutes. Identify and contact institutions of higher education for interest and representation in the César E. Chávez Institute once we have more details. And we're looking at meeting with a couple of schools, Linfield College, a private school, and Western State University in Monmouth. Those discussions are still pending. The other thing is that we've made contacts in Washington, D.C., and we've identified some possibilities of future federal funding support from USOE in Washington, D.C. And of course, one of the questions that we keep asking, and this is directed again at our young leaders that are sitting, I know there's Century High School that's sitting, students from Century High School that accompany us this evening. But one of the things that we're going to be asking, and I think Jose mentioned a few minutes ago, Compa and I are at that age where we're not going to be around very much longer. But these young minds that we have here, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. And if you want a Chicano college, a Latino college in the future, it's very possible. You cannot compare the 70s to the 2025s now. There's monies available. It's a lot easier to do this. But again, there has to be some ganas out there on the part of young people to take this. You are young leaders of the future. And then one of the things that you need to do, and I say this at every session where I get an opportunity, our commitment, your commitment, everybody's commitment here, it's not for 6 months, it's not for 1 year, it's not for 10 years. This has to be a lifelong commitment on the part of the Chicano community, the Latino community, to make things better for our brothers and sisters in the future.
Thank you so much for the question. Are there any other questions out there? ¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Sorry. What would you say to Latino and Latina families that don't necessarily believe in college or that it's necessary?
A los padres, mijo, a los padres latinos que no creen que los hijos de nosotros deben asistir a una universidad, sea community college or university, I beg our parents to get involved in the education of their children at elementary, middle school, and high school. There's still a lack of language minority representation in the schools. Parent engagement, very little parent engagement. If you get involved and find out what's going on in the schools, there is no doubt in my mind that our parents will support you to go into higher education. And remember, not everybody has to go to a university. Not everybody has to go to a community college. You know, there's some trades where people are making tons of good money. So it's open, there's a lot of possibilities out there. But one of the things that needs to happen with our school districts, you need to engage language minority parents, real engagement, not this show and tell stuff that goes on. Not this show and tell stuff that goes on. Real parent engagement to know what's going on with migrant education, with Title I monies, what's going on with books, what's going on with everything within that school district. Who's making the decisions there? The administrators, teachers, and so on. There's got to be more of a connection. If that happens, Miko, and our parents become more visible in the schools, I can guarantee you that our parents will support you to go to higher education, go to university.
And not everybody, you know, wants to go to college or feels that that's the best thing for them. What we said right now about, you know, mentors and professors, counselors, we say the same thing for those people seeking careers in the workforce. They need to have interns. They need to have job training. They need to have program for these youngsters so that they can become skilled craftsmen, and that's where the workforce is going to come from in the years to come. So there's options there, options that didn't exist before, but are now becoming more and more prevalent. So whatever it is, you know, beyond high school, we encourage that you take the path you prefer, not what somebody is suggesting, but what works best for you. And I have nothing negative to say about, you know, the work that takes place in construction, in industry, and in that whole field. But it needs to be, you know, addressed just like higher ed needs to be addressed to be inclusive of our community in the future.
Nico, before, go ahead and applaud. Before I leave the subject, the question that you asked, I forgot one very important part, okay? And that's you, the students. It's real important, mijo, that students come prepared out of high school. You've gotta do your homework. You've gotta participate in the classrooms. You've gotta take some of those advanced classes that can give you free credit to go to higher education. You've gotta comportarte bien, responsable en las escuelas también. ¿Me entiendes? Todo esto es parte de la familia. Si quieres que los padres tuyos se involucren en la educación tuya, tú también tienes que enseñarte a producir a un nivel alto, challenging, that's going to help you. Okay?
There's another question in the back, in the middle. I thought I saw somebody raise their hand. Oh, here he is.
Hola, buenas tardes, me llamo Uriel. Nomás les quería preguntar qué consejos me dan a mí o a las personas que son como la primera generación en ir al colegio, a la universidad de su familia.
Como digo en el documentario, muchas familias no saben casi nada tocante la educación. Tienen las esperanzas que sus hijos logren éxito, que hagan bien y que se desarrollen y sean profesionales. Pero como dijo Sonny ahorita, es importante que los padres aprendan y tomen en cuenta lo que se requiere y dejar de desanimarse porque quizás nunca han tenido esa experiencia como familia. But it's important that youngsters and families think about it and get educated, learn about the options that are out there for them, regardless of whether you're first generation, second generation. It's always there, and sometimes, there's a need in some places for this workforce, this student, this community. So no importa la generación, sigan pensando positivo, sigan buscando salida y tengan éxito más allá de la secundaria.
Uriel, I can share as well. I'm a first generation Chicana. My father grew up in poverty in Mexico, and I just want to say que no te dé miedo hacer preguntas, no te dé miedo si no sabes algo, si no conoces a alguien, be sure to approach people and ask them all of the questions that you have. Don't be afraid. I think that's my biggest piece of advice for a first generation person. I know it's scary. I know that we don't have all of the answers. There will never be a wrong question for you to ask. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to approach people and ask them all of the questions that you have.
Are there any more questions out there? Any more? Anybody want to ask a question? Okay.
It's not a question, but a comment and acknowledgement. Many years ago, I would say 20-some years ago, let me say this. I live in Vancouver, Washington. And about 20 years ago, I started to do some research, like what is going on for Latino youth in the Pacific Northwest. And I reached out to our neighbors here in Oregon, and Sonny Montes and José Romero said, come on over. They invited me into their space to learn about their work. When I was part of the planning committee of the César Chávez Leadership Conference that is held at Monmouth, Western Oregon University in Monmouth. And the energy, the inspiration was the catalyst for what became a Latino youth organization in Vancouver, Washington. So thank you for opening your doors and being welcoming to me, because your influence and your energy were the catalyst for the work that we are now doing in Southwest Washington for Latino youth and their families. So your impact and your influence has no walls and has no state lines. It has impacted many youth in Southwest Washington and beyond. So thank you.
Since I have the mic, I get to ask a question. Actually, I'm going to flip it, and I need to ask Alicia, because obviously she did an amazing job in telling the story. But I wanted to ask Alicia, what inspired you to do this? Because, again, if not, somebody had to be a catalyst, right, to do this. And so that's my question to you.
Thank you for the question. I'm a first-generation Chicana. My parents immigrated to this country. They were undocumented for many years. To this day, they don't speak English. And language advocacy and accessibility has always been very important for me, for my experience, and for the experience of my community and my friends. I grew up translating documents for my parents, and I don't think that any child should bear that responsibility to translate medical records for their parents. I think that we should be investing in creating language accessibility in education and in every single field. I know that here in this region, there is a great opportunity to continue to develop content for our community in our languages that we speak, not just Spanish. We have so many Vietnamese communities, so many refugee communities that come here and settle. And so I'm inspired to do this work because I have experienced exclusion in terms of language accessibility, and I want to help remove those barriers.
I guess I get to, we're about that time, but I just want to leave a message for you, and I really believe this, and I feel every one of you, we're, in new times right now, but everybody here has a gift. This is my belief. We have a gift. A lot of people know what their gifts, but a lot of people don't know what it is. But the way I describe it is, what is something that you love to do that no one would have to pay you to do? You just do it, right? Some people do, and I'll just leave that up to you. But I think right now in these times, we need to reach into that and share that with the world. It's always good usually, right? Because it gives us passion. We would do it no matter what, and I think these are testaments next to me of doing something that they were born to do, that they're destined to do. So I would just want to call, my challenge to all of you is leaving is to think about that, reflect on it, and then do something for other than yourself, right? And share your gift with the world. So I just want to leave with that. I know that we have maybe one more question, but take that for thought, and I thank you for all being here, but we'll turn to my right here. One more question.
Muy buenas noches. Me llamo Miguel Amezcua Salinas, Oregonian since 1950. Words that we hear tonight were not heard back then. 90% of the people that we have been talking about here in your studies, as well as the kinds of things that you have done, you're doing, and you're going to continue to do. Those folks are either they're ex-migrants, or like myself, I still go out of the berry fields just to kind of remember what went on back then. I do it for fun. I'm a wannabe historian. I'm writing the story of Colegio in a pre-Colegio fashion. As I mentioned to you, Jose, I'd like to introduce my wife, who was there as a staff member in 1965 at Maranhão College. And the word migrant has been mentioned here at least 100 times. Well, I have some sad news to share with you. Very few people know the leadership of migrant education here locally in Oregon started in St. Paul, Oregon, 1957, by a fellow by the name of Ronald Petrie. I don't know if you ever met Ronald Petrie, but I'd like to encourage everyone to say a prayer for him, because at this point in time, he's under hospice. He was my elementary school principal. He's been my amigo since then. I don't know of anyone that is more fortunate than Miguel Salinas. I go visit him once a week. I'm scheduled to go visit him tomorrow. Furthermore, the word migrant education, or the term migrant education, evolved over time, but the original, what they call research and development, and you can look it up. I hope you have enough time in the Google, because there's plenty of information there. But unfortunately, the universities, the teachers within the state, and the leadership tend not to remember folks who are now almost 100 years old. We're too busy in the present. Well, my motto is that if you don't know your past, it's kind of hard to talk about the future and also the present, and all three things at once. Sin un pasado no tenemos presente. Si no tenemos presente, no tenemos mañana. Folks, it is my honor to, first of all, Tony, you have come a long ways. Last time I saw you at Nellie Muir, and you were one of our students there. May I add that you were in bilingual education, directed by yours truly. And it was not a good time. Are you kidding me? Politically? But let me say this, that migrant education not only was born in Oregon, but in 1964, under the war of poverty, some of us who are over 40 may remember that. Raise your hand if you know what the war of poverty was, 1964. Okay. Well, then Mr. Ron Petrie was called by the administration, education administration. And I think that we have to underscore the importance that some people had. And Ron Petrie to me, has been one of those miracles that happens once in a lifetime. Well, he was part of the migrant education movement back in the mid-60s. And I just want to encourage you to please have him in your prayers. And I will be submitting to the State Department of Education. I haven't been there in a while doing my advocacy, but I'm going to make sure that his name lives on in the same way that Colegio César Chávez will live on. Muy buenas noches, gracias.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. I hope you all feel inspired by this project, and yeah, thank you.
Gracias, gracias.
Be careful on the way home. Be careful on the way home. Good night.
Yeah, please encourage everybody to come see the exhibit. If you haven't seen it tonight, it's to my right, but please come see it. It'll be until April.